This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show. Your war room for insider news and draft analysis from deep within the confines of Cowboys headquarters at the Star in Frisco.
Today is Thursday, February 8th, 2024, and we are now 77 days away from the NFL Draft in Detroit, Michigan. Welcome into the Draft Show presented by Miller Lite, a taste you can depend on. This segment is brought to you by your Texas Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas. We've got Nick Harris, Aisha Morrison. I'm Kyle Yeomans with Chris Beam running everything in the back. I'm Kyle Yeomans. Oh, I already said that. Welcome in, everybody. Glad you're with us. A little Black Rifle coffee, get us ready to go today and talk a little bit more draft. I might just be a little bit shaken up because of an article I read this morning on DallasCowboys.com that this defensive coordinator search is going to happen into next week. Could happen into next week. Nick Harris wrote that article.
Yeah, front office is willing to expand it into next week. They're conducting another interview this morning with New York Jets safeties coach Marquand Manuel. So, and I don't expect that to be the last name thrown into the mix. So, yeah, it's a far and wide search. I know some people on Twitter were happy that it's starting to expand and that it's a thorough look through. And then there's some others that are like, there's no plan after Dan Quinn left. How could they? So, you get both sides of the coins with this fan base sometimes.
I don't know if you can say there's no plan just because the search is taking longer. They may go with whoever we thought where they were going to go with. I know my pick would be Mike Zimmer. I think they still could go with Mike Zimmer, but there's nothing wrong with expanding a search and taking a look at other candidates, because the only way you get bit by that is if you get a coordinator candidate taken by another team. Most of the teams that have new staffs or are exchanging staffs have already come to that conclusion, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you look at open coordinator spots, as you said, it's not as open as it maybe would have been 2-3 weeks ago had Quinn taken a job at that point. So I don't think there's necessarily a race against any team. You look at the Seattle Seahawks, they're trying to put together a defensive coordinator, and Aiden Dirty is interviewing for that spot as well. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on. I know Aiden Dirty had a strong interview this week with the Cowboys front office. So certainly in the mix. Dirty, Zimmer, those are the top two candidates I would put in 1A, 1B type roles right now.
What did you guys think about I don't want to mispronounce his name.
Marquand Manuel, yeah.
Okay, Marquand.
You got it.
Manuel. Okay.
Yeah. Former Jets defensive coach.
Yes. What did you think about him being interviewed?
Yeah. I think it's a step towards the front office looking at young assistants. He played for Mike McCarthy back when McCarthy was with the Packers, so there's a little bit of a connection there. He was a DC under Quinn in Atlanta, so has coordinator experience. It would be an interesting route. I don't know enough about his scheme, about his coaching style, anything like that. But as far as casting a wide net, I think that's probably the biggest point you could take off of the Cowboys bringing him in for an interview.
Okay, tracking.
Just because Isaiah Stanback on Talking Cowboys earlier this week threw out a name and it kind of hit the wind and it worked out for him and Rex Ryan. I'm going to say my name is going to be Ken Norton Jr. That's going to be my name that I think will pop up in this. Former defensive coordinator with the Seahawks, played with the Cowboys back in the 2000s and had a solid career here in 2000s, back in the 90s. Won a couple Super Bowls with them as well. So he was at UCLA this past year as a linebackers coach, and they got a pretty good draft prospect coming out in Darius Muasau, who we've talked about a couple times on this show. But since it is the draft show, I want to spend this time, and of course, we'll have Bobby, Brian, and Zach back next week. They are still out at Radio Row for Super Bowl week and really enjoying their time out there. But I want to take this time to just throw out some names that you guys have been watching, that everybody's kind of had their eyes on. Let's do some Tell Me More, some scouting reports, and I want it to be your favorite watch this week, Isaiah. Isaiah.
That's cool.
Aisha. I said Isaiah a moment ago.
Cool.
Aisha.
Wrong show.
Yeah, wrong show, Isaiah. Aisha, I want you to tell me your best watch that you've seen so far since the week started.
Man, that's hard. I'm going to go with my fresh eyes. All right. Nazir Stackhouse, Georgia inside D lineman.
That's a great name for an interior defensive lineman.
It is. It's kind of different. But I was looking at his play and I was looking at some of the things he was capable of. I wrote down he can knock a guy back on one-on-ones. He can find the ball carrier and shed and tackle consistently, because that's something that I'm noticing from some of the DTs in this draft is that can they shed and tackle? Sure. But can they do it consistently? Some of them cannot. This guy can do it consistently. He displays a lot of patience as a run defender. He doesn't get too high. He drives and extends his arms. He takes on double teams with leverage, but he also can read well enough to split double teams at times. He has fantastic range that allows him to redirect the defender to their doom, is what I said. The overall movement, given his size, is nice, especially with his play strength. They challenged him to step up with the loss of Davis and Carter at Georgia, and he did that. I felt like he filled in very well with those are big losses, for Georgia in that interior. And I do think that he definitely showed people that he can play the game at a high level this past year. He stood out to me. I know we're looking at, people don't want to talk about inside D linemen right now, but I liked his play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is he in the draft?
Nazir Stackhouse.
Yeah.
I can see if I have him on my
I'm
board.
trying to find. I think he's in the 25 draft.
Is
I think
he?
he went back.
He went back.
I think he went
Don't
back.
make me cry.
But here's the thing: the article that I'm looking at from Sports Illustrated says 6 Bulldogs tapped as top prospects for the 2025 NFL draft, and he's one of those.
I'm slipping in
guys.
the polls.
That's okay.
Okay, I can. Okay, well,
It's a good eye, though.
Hey,
It's fine.
just getting prep ready for next year.
You're
too.
welcome, Draft Show fans.
It's fine.
You're
Okay,
already
okay,
ahead
okay.
of the game.
Okay, I will point out a guy that interests me, but he's very much so a wild card. Okay, hear me out. Eric Gentry, inside linebacker, USC.
Yeah.
He's definitely coming out.
Yo, he's like a giraffe playing linebacker, 6'6", Arizona State transfer. He was an edge player before, and USC was like, hey, let's see if you can play some linebacker. And this dude has a 7'1" wingspan. He's a nightmare as
Say
far
that
as
again?
7'1"
7'1" wingspan.
7'1" wingspan.
That's insane.
It's crazy. And you can see it when he's in coverage. This is a guy that I think could thrive being in maybe a nickel scheme where he's defending tight ends consistently because his length, he can cover so much ground quickly. He's athletic. He's still improving his run fits, but he does read the RPO well for someone. Like, it's very weird because I feel like if you look at a lot of these DNs and some of these guys, they don't play, from some of the film study I've done, they don't play the RPO consistently well. This guy can do that, and I think that it's because of a lot of what he does in coverage. And then the athleticism also allows him to chase down people in pursuit. He did have a pretty serious ankle injury in 22, was able to come back from that, but the production is there. The only thing that people might worry about, again, is the frame, because he's lean, but he's not a big big physical linebacker.
What was the weight you said again?
Hold on, I got it down here. My bad. Let me see.
I just wanted to see how wide he was to go along with the length.
No,
and see.
yeah, because it varies with these guys. So
Yeah.
I always try to make sure I'm not guesstimating with him. It says he's 215 pounds.
Okay, so a little light.
So he's a little
but he's
light.
light and lanky.
So he has, So I'm sure a coach possibly will want to put into his frame, put a little bit more size on him if necessary. Oh, I think it is necessary. And like I said, he is still developing as far as just consistently with his run fits, but in coverage, he's a problem. And he's a problem because you have to place the ball. You have to place the ball correctly with him because he's going to take it out the air. He also had some interceptions in his career. He's someone to watch. I don't know what's going to happen with him because of the length and stuff in his frame, but I was very interested in him, and I don't know if you guys will take some time to check him out too and see what you think.
I've already starred him just because of the 7'1" wingspan. That's got me interested already.
It's very crazy.
Talk about the length. What have you been looking at
Who you
over
been
there,
looking
Nick
at?
Harris?
Yeah, so
you've got like a slight grin on your face. So
Yeah, he
whoever
looks
you're about to talk
excited.
about, I know you're pumped about.
Yeah, I'm just excited about him because it's a guy that I know pretty well. Going back to his high school days at Temple High School down in Central Texas.
Super Syntax, baby.
Yeah,
254.
Super Syntax. Do y'all have a guess, a Temple High School guys, or y'all didn't go that deep just yet?
No.
Honestly, I
That's
haven't even
you
looked
and
at
your
high
crazy
schools yet.
self.
So
Anyway, this guy caught my eye at the Senior Bowl. I've known about him for a while, for going on 5 years now. Tight end Jared Wiley at TCU. And he was. I want to start with the high school days, as I do with these more to knows. He played at Temple High School alongside Quentin Johnston, who's a first round pick for the Chargers last year, and played as a first round pick this past season. Jared Wiley initially went to Texas, and then Quentin Johnston went to TCU. Jared Wiley played 2 seasons at Texas, didn't get a lot of time on the field, hadn't really seen much development in his 2 seasons that he was there. And then some guy named Jatavian Sanders walked in the door and pretty much took the starting tight end job. So Jared Wiley hopped in the transfer portal, called his old buddy Quentin Johnston, said, "Hey, you think I could probably make the team as a tight end over there?" Ended up in Fort Worth and ended his career in college as a first-team All-Big 12 member this past year. Was a really shining point on this offense for TCU this past season, and then on their national championship team where they went and got beat by Georgia in the national championship. He was a big part of that team as well. So didn't have crazy production at the college level, but he's physical. He's a playmaker. Whenever you see a big time tight end making a play in the Big 12, it's 9 times out of 10 it's going to be Jared Wiley or Jatavian Sanders. And then what I saw from him at the Senior Bowl, or I'll give my take on him going into the Senior Bowl. I was seeing him as potentially a late day 3 type guy. I was like, look, I really like what he does from a playmaking standpoint. Can he be consistent, though? Can that production translate to the NFL? When he went to the Senior Bowl, first day, he was probably the best pass catcher, natural pass catcher that I saw out of the group on both teams. He was making plays. He's physical in his route running. He's able to get at the top of his route and be able to break off with some separation, so he's got a little bit of speed there as well. I really like Jared Wiley, and when you look at him, he's got these tattoos all down his arms and legs. He reminds you of Jake Ferguson in a way, just because he's able to be so physical. He has that dog in him. If you go back and watch from TCU, I mean, he's getting in people's face, and he's doing the first down markers in their face like Jake Ferguson. But I think this is a guy that can sneak into the 4th, 5th round and have similar production towards Jake Ferguson that he's had in his first 2 seasons if he lands on the right team with a team that needs that has a need for a playmaking type tight end and an offense that can set him up to do that. 6'7", 260 pounds is what he's listed as on the TCU website. I think he's closer to probably 6'5.5", 6'6", but still, I mean, he has that length, he has that size. He's able to translate that physicality whenever he's out and route running, and I like what he's done in run blocking as well. I think this is an all-around tight end that I think could sneak into early day 3, potentially late day 2, if he has a good combine as well.
Experienced guy, 12 games, 47 catches last year, 520 yards. He also had 8 touchdowns as well. So along with those 47 catches, he had 8 scores, and this is probably the most notable stat that I'm looking at here. The fact that quarterbacks, when targeting him, had a 110 passer rating.
Oh, reliable.
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's if we're talking about the way that tight ends have played a factor in this offense across the hallway with the Cowboys, you need a reliable tight end. You need a reliable target, a safety net. We talked about it with Dalton Schultz, now Jake Ferguson, even Jason Witten back when he was playing. Yeah. You need somebody like that, and it seems like Jared Wiley is there. With as much as we put a lot of emphasis on Big Ten tight ends with these Michigan and Iowas and Wisconsins and all these tight ends that have come out from there, is there any worry based off of the Big 12 slate compared to the Big Ten slate?
No, I wouldn't say so. The way offenses have been able to produce in the Big 12, gosh, for the better part of all of our lifetimes,
sure.
I'm confident in an offensive weapon being able to come out and produce.
You like him or Sanders more?
I love Sanders. It's going to be Sanders for me. But the thing about Jatavian Sanders is his athleticism
out of
is
Texas,
through the roof. Yeah, correct. His athleticism is through the roof, and you look at some of the catches that he made last season in Texas. It's really, really legit. My only concern with Jatavian Sanders is consistent health. He battled injuries each of the last 2 seasons throughout the year, missed a game here and there, but I think that's just going to come with a little bit more experience. What's interesting about Jatavian Sanders, if I can kind of be a sicko about him for a minute.
Go for it.
Came out of Denton Ryan High School, which we talked about. Imani Bailey on Tuesday also came out of Denton Ryan. They were both on that state championship team in 2019. He was coming out as a pass rusher, as a defensive end. That was what he was supposed to be going into college. That's what we had ranked him as at the on the recruiting sites, because he looked more natural as a pass rusher, but he was still making these wild one-handed catches on the offensive side of the ball, playing tight end and outside receiver. So he goes to Texas. It had other schools involved, Alabama, Oklahoma, but goes to Texas, and within the first couple of weeks of fall camp ends up being a tight end. And he's like, no, this guy's going to play tight end. From what we heard down in Austin, it's like, no, this guy, he runs routes. He has a developed route tree. He can run block. We're going to try him on offense, and if it doesn't work out, we know he'll work on the defensive side. Well, it worked out, and now he's probably going to be an early second-round tight end.
Yeah, I mean, when you mentioned the injuries, a tight end that comes to mind was Kincaid.
Dalton Kincaid.
And I mean, a lot of people were worried about his injuries and some of the things with him, but he came out this season with the Bills and was productive with them and showed that he was able to be resilient in that way. So injuries matter. They do matter, but I am kind of at a place too where I'm giving players the chance to right that, to show that they can stay healthy and be able to play the game at a high level as well.
I know this is kind of looking into retrospective a little bit, but did it surprise you that the run of tight ends happened when it did? I kind of would have expected it to happen in the 20s last year. And I bring that up to the point of it was such a stacked tight end class last year,
it was.
objectively. And that run didn't happen until, I guess, 35 is when it really started to pick up.
It was the Laporta pick that
and
went off the board, and then a lot of teams, I think, jumped the gun and wanted to go get somebody. Dallas was sitting there waiting in the second round, wanting a tight end. Of course, they ended up taking Luke Schoonmaker. But I think I agree with you because we were talking about if Kincaid falls to the Cowboys, if Mayer out of Notre Dame falls to the Cowboys, if you have Laporta that's there, would you even entertain the option? And then boom, 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 they all kind of went off the board, but it was later than what you thought.
Yeah. And is that more speaking towards the value of the position or just kind of draft day, shenanigans? I mean, you run that draft back 10 more times and you probably get that run in the 20s a couple more times.
I think people really value the position.
Yeah.
I think it can really change what you can do offensively. We've seen it with this team, how it opened up things when it wasn't at the beginning of the season when you weren't getting anything from your tight ends. Really, when Jake Ferguson did become a guy that other teams had to worry about, you saw people rolling coverage to him. You saw people allocating to be able to stop him. I do think the position has become intricate to what you do offensively, but then also, too, when you look at some of the better offenses in the league, guess what? They got good tight ends. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I do think that was a big part of like people looking around the league and saying, okay, well, these teams made it. They had a consistent tight end. They could run 12 personnel to counter the nickel and things like that. So yeah, it was surprising, but we were ready for it though. I felt like we were ready for it last year when it happened.
Yeah. The one thing, like you said, it values the position because a lot of those guys went earlier than we were even anticipating, going up in that early part of the second round. But it was draft day shenanigans.
Yes,
if they ran
too.
that back today, Sam Laporta would be higher. Dalton Kincaid, I think, would be higher. Okay. You have guys that would be back in that category. So I think it was a little bit of draft day shenanigans. Maybe the fact that those quarterbacks were falling and there was kind of a weird thing with Will Levis there too kind of played a factor into it. But
I'd be curious.
It's definitely interesting to think about.
I'd be curious to know what GMs think about how much time they put into the tight end class last year. Mm-hmm. Takes Sam Laporta out of the equation because he was just phenomenal. I think he met expectations and exceeded them. Mm-hmm. Dalton Kincaid met, but you look at Michael Mayer, probably didn't. You look at Luke Schoonmaker, probably didn't. So I'd be curious to know what GMs think about how much time and effort that they put into those top round tight ends last year, and if they would kind of feel the same way going into this year. Obviously, the tight end class is much different. The tight end crop is much different going into future drafts, but I'd be curious to know if there's any, if there's any difference in the approach towards the tight end position.
We talked about this, though, is the flip of everybody want athletic tight ends, huh? That's the new wave, huh? Because it was at some point in time, it was you wanted a guy like a Michael Mayer, like somewhat. When you look at him, you're like, oh, it's a tight end.
You want somebody that can block.
Yes, the traditional field that can play in line and stuff. But we're definitely seeing that these more athletic tight ends are giving people trouble. And I do also think it speaks to what the linebacker positions become and how people use their safeties in the big nickel and the coverage ability from some of these DBs and stuff are able to match better with some of these tight ends. You need a guy that has some yak ability, can break tackles, get upfield, and do things. Block as well, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, what else can you give me in the receiving game? I think it's so much easier to key in on an offense when they don't have the middle of the field being utilized consistently with a tight end. So it's interesting to me to see how the conversation's changed with the tight end position.
Yeah, it has changed. And, I mean, look at the 4 teams that made it to the conference title games, too. And I mean, you've got George Kittle for the 49ers, Travis Kelce for the Chiefs, Sam Laporta for the Lions. And then I know he didn't necessarily help them get there, but Mark Andrews is still one of the better tight ends when he's healthy in the NFL. So with all that being said, having a good, athletic, versatile tight end who can block, who can receive, who can do a lot of things helps you out a lot. I don't know if the Cowboys are really in the mood for a tight end this year.
Yeah, definitely not. And this is more
Jake
of a
Ferguson,
definitely not. This is more of a large scope view of the tight end position.
That's the beauty of this show. So we don't always have to talk Cowboys.
I do want to ask y'all though, are they? I mean, we're saying they're not, but Jake Ferguson is the only guy that gave you anything consistently.
Mm-hmm.
You're betting on Schoonmaker developing more as a receiver, betting on it. We don't know what's going to happen with Hendershot because
you didn't get anything from Hendershot.
He had an up and down year from here. John Stevens, who was somebody that I think you could have used, coming back from the ACL, don't know when he's going to be fully ready to insert himself. I mean, I'm just saying, we could say, okay, they're not going to touch tight end, but at the same time, what do you have really depth-wise that's proven at this point? And I know they may not touch it as early as, second round or something like that, but at the same time,
day 3,
we can't guarantee that Schoonmaker is going to become a viable pass option.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if there's quite a bit of effort put into the undrafted free agent market for tight end.
I'd like that too.
Just the number of draft picks that the Cowboys have going into this year. I'd be surprised if it's a tight end, but I don't think it's off the table. I think that's a good point.
I got a guy.
Throw it.
I don't know if he's going to be undrafted. I don't want to put that evil on him, Ricky Bobby. But at the same time, his name is Tanner McLachlan. Tight end out of Arizona. He's an FSU transfer, wide receiver converted tight end. He had the most receptions at Arizona. Even he surpassed Gronkowski there. Very reliable target.
Pretty good name.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He has 76 receptions all time, and that's the most in Arizona. I appreciate his speed up the seams. That's one thing that I noticed is that he has that. You can see that he does have some former receiver to him. He's a very willing blocker. I mean, when you go look at him, it's not always perfect, don't get me wrong, but the effort in blocking is there, and that means he's coachable, and I like that about him. He really works for his QB as well. I mean, you see his QB scrambling and things like that. He's looking to get open for his quarterback, and also, too, he snatches the ball out of the air as well, which is, to me, it kind of speaks to some of his receiver background. He has fluid hips, although you can tell he's still learning how to work angles as a tight end. Again, kind of gives me maybe later round guy, maybe undrafted guy that has a lot of things to work upon, and he got some wiggle to him also in the open field. He has some yak ability, can do some things, but he's a hurdler like a guy we got on this team right now. He do not like his legs being taken out like that. But I just appreciate the player. Like watching him, I watched about 3 games from him, and I was like, okay, this is a solid tight end that can develop into something good, but he also too can be a reliable receiving option for you, I think, right away, and help you in the passing game. So Tanner McLachlan, tight end out of Arizona, is someone that might be somebody.
I like it. He's also Canadian, Lethbridge, Alberta.
Come on, Canadian. I like it.
Gotta love it. All right, let's take our first break. When we come back, it's time for some Twitter on the 20. What position could possibly be double dip territory for the Dallas Cowboys in 2024? Is there a position of need where you could possibly hit 2? That's one of the questions. We'll answer a couple more when we come back with more on the Draft Show.
I'm Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
And they snap it to Prescott, who looks right. It's not there. He escapes left. He'll run for a first down.
Just like football, when it comes to crypto, it's important to have a team you can trust. With blockchain.com, I know I'm in good hands. Since 2011, they've been trusted by millions around the world to buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrency.
Prescott's going to run this himself. Run it up the middle, and he scores.
Whether you're new to crypto or an active trader, they've got you covered. What are you waiting for? Get started at blockchain.com.
I'm Darren Woodson, former Dallas Cowboy player and Super Bowl champion. When I played in the NFL at a high level, I relied on my vision to see the field. As I started getting older, I noticed my vision wasn't as good, and I was getting frustrated from wearing my glasses all day. I went to Laser Care Eye Center, and Dr. G talked about all the options. Thanks to technology and Laser Care Eye Center, I can see near, far, and between. Don't fumble your vision any longer. Visit them at dfweyes.com and tell them Darren sent you. They got me back on my game.
In a stressful world, Lincoln provides balance and calm amidst the chaos by creating sanctuaries that move you through the world with ease. Our vehicles make your time richer and more uplifting with human-centric design, intelligent technology, and powerful performance. As the official luxury vehicle of the Dallas Cowboys, driving a Lincoln is just another way to show your team pride. Experience our full lineup of luxury vehicles, including the Corsair, Aviator, Navigator, and Nautilus at Lincoln.com.
Hi, I'm Danny McCray, Dallas Cowboys alumni player here with Smoothie King. And Smoothie King wants to ask you, what's that sound? That's the sound of us magically transforming our smoothie bowls into 2 new decadent flavors. Dig into a cool acai or pitaya bowl, handcrafted with crunchy, purely Elizabeth granola, fresh strawberries, and finished with a velvety chocolate hazelnut drizzle. Perfect for breakfast, lunch, or anytime you want to munch. And that's the sound of you making them disappear. Smoothie bowls, now in 2 new decadent flavors. Only at Smoothie King, the official smoothie of the Dallas Cowboys.
This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
Dallas Cowboys Game Time, powered by Lenovo, the official gaming platform and community of the Dallas Cowboys. You can sign up now to compete in Fortnite tournaments for a chance to win a VIP experience at the 2024 Dallas Cowboys Draft Party. Qualifiers begin on February 24th and run through the 28th. Learn more and register at DallasCowboys.com/gametime.
You play Fortnite, Aisha?
I am not a gamer.
Not a gamer?
I'm not a gamer in the slightest, y'all.
I did a couple tournaments for them where I did like analyst work, and it was really, really fun.
It's intense.
The game time stuff is really fun. Now, I wasn't providing analysis on Fortnite. Let me get it straight. I was doing Madden.
That's a good crouch.
Yeah.
Good usage of the
nice bush. But yeah, I think it would have been a different thing if it was Fortnite. They've done some like Rocket League stuff. It is really, really cool. Cowboys Game Time presented by Lenovo. Really, really cool event. Go sign up right now. All right. What was that?
Are you?
I don't do anything until after draft. So ask me like April, what is that, 29th?
What is Fortnite? What's the premise anyway?
I mean, it's like a first-person shooter, third-person shooter, whatever you call it, and you run around and you're in a map and you got to be the last one standing, basically. And you can build things and move around and loot. You grab a lot of it. You heard of Call of Duty Warzone?
It gives that feel.
It's just a different version.
Battle Royale.
Battle Royale. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you, Beamer. Beamer's the gamer of the group. That's who you need to be asking. He's the one
That's correct.
He carries the squad every night. All right. He also carries our squad into some
Twitter on the 20.
That's a professional transition.
That was a
there,
great
gentlemen.
transition.
All right. Aisha, I want you to answer this question. The first question of Twitter on the 20 today comes from Lane, and he says, if the Cowboys were to double dip at a position, which one do you feel like is most likely? And he listed a couple. He said offensive lineman, linebacker, safety, or other, but it could be really whatever position you want.
You said you're going to cheat.
Yeah.
That's kind of why I wanted you to go first.
Gosh. I think you might lose more guys than what you think on the defensive line to free agency. So I'm going to say DN.
Wow. Going and picking up multiple edge rushers.
Listen, I'm going out on a limb, but I just do think that you have quite a few guys that are up, and this group has been together for a minute.
Depends on if you get Dorrance back.
Yep.
Dante's probably already got a place in Washington.
Yeah. I'm looking at who else is there. DT is wise. Neville Gallimore is a guy. Chauncey's still here. He's still going to be here if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, you have Micah. That's fine.
Jonathan Hankins.
D-Law is still signed.
He's here.
He's still here, but he is getting older, and you need to be able to help him, stay fresh throughout the season. I could see it maybe.
I could see it.
Maybe.
I like it.
I'm guessing.
It's a little like out of the grand scope. I think the easy answers here are the ones that he answered as offensive line, linebacker, safety. But if you're talking about an under the radar double dip, that's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, well, I was initially thought I was going to cheat, but if he said offensive line, I'm saying offensive line. The reason I thought I was cheating is like tackle, guard, be specific. But no, I think they take 2 offensive linemen in this draft. We've talked about tackle, getting that in the first round, or center. I think whichever one you don't get, you have to get at some point during the draft. It would shock me if there's not 2 offensive linemen in this draft class.
Okay, let's say we are being specific. You're splitting them into 3 spots: center, guard, tackle. Which one do you feel like would be most likely to double dip going into this draft?
Probably tackle.
Tackle.
Yeah, probably tackle.
Just because of the value there in the first round, and then you pick up one later to try and develop.
Well, that and also the current depth of the team. You look at the center options that could work for the Dallas Cowboys if Tyler Biadasz is not in the building anymore. You look at the tackle options if Tyron Smith is not in the building anymore. I think you're a little bit more thin at tackle in that scenario.
Who's your tackle right now? Your left tackle right now?
If Tyron Smith does not come back.
Because Tyron is an unrestricted free agent. Chuma Edoga is an unrestricted free agent. Who's your left tackle?
Probably either Awesome Richards. You got Matt Waletzko. You got, Tyler Smith.
I think Tyler Smith is my left tackle.
Yeah,
and then
that's probably a better
maybe
thought.
TJ Bass is my left guard.
Yeah. Yeah, stumbling.
Mercy. And that's what but that's another thing that's frustrating again is like we don't know nothing about Awesome.
Yeah.
Like it's very limited in what we were able to see from him to even be able to. You was like, you look like uncomfortable saying his name just now. So, no, it does put you in a tough spot. But I agree with you. To your point about some undrafted free agents and stuff like that. This center class is kind of deep, man. Like to where I think maybe some guys might be available outside of there. Do you think so? You think everybody's gonna grab them?
You look at a couple of centers that I think we saw throughout the All-Star game week. Hunter Norzad out of Penn State. I know that was a guy that me and
I really
Kyle
liked him.
Kind of came together on. You look at Tanner Bortolini out of Wisconsin. That's probably a late day three type guy.
Yes.
Matt Lee out of Miami. So there's going to be some options later in the draft. I think if you really want one of these top two centers, though, you got to get them early. Yeah. First round or second round.
So that's the second question on Twitter on the 20. A deal says if the Cowboys took offensive tackle early, centers that you would consider worthy of replacing a Tyler Biadasz at center if you waited till the later round. So, I mean, if you're talking about starting caliber right this second, I think it would have to be a second, third round. Maybe a fourth. That's what Tyler Biadasz was, and he was immediately a starter. So second, third, fourth round prospects at center that you would trust to come in and be ready.
You look at Zach Frazier out of West Virginia. Dane Brugler talked about him pretty highly whenever he was in here, talking about how he broke his leg on a late drive for West Virginia, and instead of taking the injury timeout and costing West Virginia a timeout in that late game scenario, he's crawling off the field with a broken leg, and he gets off, and his recovery's actually gone really well. He was at Senior Bowl, being able to kind of work through some things. He wasn't in team drills or anything, but just the fact that he was out there and able to show that he actually can walk with two legs was pretty impressive. And he's a mauler as well in the middle. You'll get Bo Lemmer out of Arkansas. That was a guy I talked about a little bit coming out of Senior Bowl as well. We've talked about Cedric Van Prank Ranger out of Georgia on this show as well. I think there are some guys, but it just kind of depends on what type of guy that they bring in. I think they would need a run stopper. You look at Bo Lemmer here, right here in the middle for Arkansas on this film. Shout out to Chris Beam in the back. But just being able to kind of identify where these holes can open up in the middle. But I think it's most important to find a center that can run block. And you see what he does here in this run blocking, being able to pave the middle of the defense right there and create some short yardage gains. But I think that's probably what you miss with Tyler Biadasz at times last year and being able to pull in those kind of scenarios. But if you can bring in a run block first center, I think you have a guy that could potentially start day one.
Yeah. Well, first before we get there, did you like some of the things you saw from Dominic Pooney playing center at the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, didn't get to see him a whole lot, but he's a big guy. I will say he's a big guy, and he's got a lot of positional flex. He worked at many different positions in Mobile. So we've talked about a lot of these guys that are center hybrids. You know, we've talked about Graham Barton. We've talked about Jackson Powers Johnson. I think there's probably a need to be able to find a guy who can be able to focus on that run blocking in the interior and has a little bit more of those knacks. Not to say like, don't draft Graham Barton. That's I'm not saying that at all. But I want to be able to solidify a run blocker in the middle. I don't necessarily want a pass protector first.
Yeah, I have a guy, saw him at the Shrine Bowl this year. Barnacles. I need to write down. I didn't write down his school. My bad. I was just taking notes. Dylan McMahon.
North Carolina State.
Yes, North Carolina State. So you talk about, okay, maybe this guy will be in some of the later rounds. He has good movement and a strong anchor. You notice it in drills. Crazy vertical, so he's strong. out of his stance, very strong out of his stance. You talk about the run blocking, you want him to get up on guys. He's played all across the line, but I think he is a center. That's where I felt like he thrived the most when I saw him. The hand technique is there. He's not afraid to wrestle and to counter. He has consistent good hand placement as well. So again, you're looking for the technique, like you just mentioned. He knows how to play this position. He can climb up the field quickly, and he can take on angles. I like his motor, and he can finish at the second level as well. I do think that this is a gentleman that people will pay attention to in the later rounds, and he showed some good things during the Shrine Bowl, but also during the practices as well. He's real strong. That's a center for you. So we'll keep an eye on him maybe for the later rounds.
I like it. All right, this question comes from Bob. He said, what of the right tackles could you see moving over to the left side in the NFL out of this tackle class? A lot of offensive line questions to talk about.
Yeah, so I'll jump out with two right off the bat. You look at Talisi Fuaga out of Oregon State. I think that a lot of the appeal is that he could be a left tackle option. Played right tackle mostly with Oregon State, and now he's starting to sneak into top 10 pick territory, potentially even. I've seen mocks this week that have him above Joe Alt out of Notre Dame.
Wow.
Which is quite wild. Not to say it's untrue, but just wild. Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma played right tackle for them, but can play left tackle. Got a lot of reps at left tackle during the Senior Bowl as well, so that's a guy that could swing around. I think there's, whenever you look at the tackle position and you look at the development with a lot of these guys, you see Tyler Guyton here taking some right tackle snaps, but whenever you look at the tackle position, the development, and what they can do at this stage of their career, it's not necessarily a situation where if they haven't played left tackle their entire life that they can't do it, especially with the offensive line development that we've seen in Dallas. Being able to bring a guy that is mainly focused in at right tackle, it doesn't take that long to be able to work at left. I think the only time you would run into an issue where that couldn't happen is if there's mobility concerns. And if there's mobility concerns, you probably don't want him at tackle anyway.
Probably not.
So I'm not really concerned about any guy who would have a ton of right tackle experience at this stage of his career, 22, 23 years old, and coming in as a left tackle.
I love how every time the film starts rolling in the studio, we've got 3 monitors in here now, where we used to only have the one. And the 3 monitors all have the highlights, and we're all such film junkies that we just get locked in on the film, and we're like looking for hand placement and technique, and we're trying to move around and see what Tyler Guyton's doing here to win this rep and things like that.
Or lose this rep. He's about to lose this rep.
But I will say, is it important? We've talked about this. We haven't really talked about right tackle like that. Where's your depth at right tackle? I'll wait.
Exactly.
It's the same thing. It's the same tackle in general, and that's kind of like what I'm speaking to as well.
The flexibility is going to matter because you, at the very least, you need a suitable swing to be able to come in if necessary. So, I guess right tackle is not something that a lot of people are just thinking like you will be looking at, but you should be maybe looking at it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to try to check out some of the later round guys and see if we can find some guys with how the draft is set up for the Cowboys, see if there's some guys that stand out.
A couple of interesting later round guys that I've seen over the course of the last couple of weeks. You look at Ethan Driscoll out of Marshall, big guy, every bit of 6'6". I don't have his official listing, but he was one of the taller tackle prospects, and he moves really well. I think the only thing that he kind of lacks is experience in dealing with crafty pass rushers. You can tell that Marshall, they're in the Sun Belt now, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Marshall in the Sun Belt being able to deal with a lot of power guys that come off that edge, and he was lining up against more athletic guys like Latu out of UCLA during Senior Bowl. So just kind of being able to account for that, I think that's why he'd probably be a later round guy. And you look at Christian Jones out of Texas. You look at experience. 45 games plus of experience at Texas for Christian Jones, working at right tackle. He got a little bit of work at left tackle before Kelvin Banks came into the equation, but being able to work at right tackle really helped him as well. And I think Beam's cooking up some film here on Christian Jones, but you see his power, you see the experience, and just being able to come out of that set as natural as he does, that's what makes Christian Jones really impressive as a tackle prospect. I think he's a high floor guy and a low ceiling. You know what you're going to get out of him, and I think he is a guy that could contribute at the NFL level. I think whatever team he lands on an NFL roster. Will he start day one? Probably not, but I think he's definitely a guy you would love to have in your room as a depth option. You've seen what tackle depth can be so important towards in the NFL NFL in these days. There was times early in the season where Chuma Edoga was a reliable depth option. I think once you got to the Miami game, you probably exhausted that a little bit. But to be able to have a guy that you can trust in those depth options, I think Christian Jones is one of them.
It's almost like the same scouting report we were giving Awesome Richards last year out of North Carolina.
That's
High
fair.
floor, low ceiling guy. You kind of know what you get. Depth as he develops into the league. And like Aisha said, that's part of the frustration with Richards is that you thought it was a high floor, so you want to see that development, and you haven't necessarily seen it yet. All right, this question comes from Eric. He says, outside of the top 3 wide receivers, Marvin Harrison Jr., Ohio State, Malik Neighbors, LSU, and then Rome Odunze from Washington, anybody slips to 24 that would interest you? Outside of those 3 guys, would you take a pick at 24 at one of these wide receivers in a CeeDee Lamb scenario, even though I would argue CeeDee Lamb was a part of the big 3 back in 2020?
I don't think there's one you take at 24. If it's one of those, Brian Thomas Jr., I'll throw that name out
LSU?
there. Yeah, LSU, Brian Thomas Jr. I think that's one that you probably toy with the idea of. But you look at the needs on this team and you look at where they need to beef up certain areas.
Yeah.
I struggle with taking a wide receiver in the first round. They need one at some point though, and that's why when we were throwing out those theoreticals on or hypotheticals on Tuesday, I kind of inserted Brendan Rice in that equation just because it wouldn't surprise me if they took a gamble on one in the third round. I think there's going to be a run of receivers in the third round. If you want to get in on one that can be productive early, I think that's when you need to take one. But at 24, I struggle with taking anybody outside of those top 4, and I would include Brian Thomas Jr. in that equation. But I think there's some late first round guys that are really fun. Troy Franklin out of Oregon. Yeah, Keon Coleman out of Florida State.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some interesting options, but with as deep as this receiver class is, in my opinion, you want to wait till the third round, I think.
Yeah, it's very deep. It's a lot of guys that interest you. I mean, I have not gotten a chance to talk about him much, but I like the gentleman out of A&M, is it Ananias?
Ananias
Smith. Yeah.
Ananias Smith. He stood out to me when I watched him the other night. Let me get to his.
He is so shifty.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, he is electric with the ball in his hands. You talk about yards after the catch, returns. I mean, he is lightning in a bottle fast. And I think there were some questions with Texas A&M fans just throughout the years of certain parts of his game. I think ball tracking. I mean, he has the speed to be a deep threat, but he wasn't very good at tracking the ball to make it happen. And then he wasn't a contested catch guy. He wasn't going to go up and make a grab. So those were the kind of things with Smith specifically out of A&M that, man, he's got all these tools, he's got all these things, but if you can't catch the ball in contested scenarios, then it's going to hurt you a little bit.
I wonder I do think it depends on your scheme and what you're trying to do, because he's bursty, he's good, his short area of quickness is good, but he's trustworthy and he's versatile, but he's creative in his route running as well. He's tough also, too, for his size. I mean, he'll get out there and block. He'll get out there and willingly do some things. So to your point about the contested catch thing, it's like, okay, well, is that something that we can work on? Is that something we can add?
If you don't put him in that situation, then all of a sudden he's a weapon for you.
Yeah, I think some of the running back experiences that he has gives him good vision in the open field and allows him to be elusive. But it's interesting because last year we talked about there weren't that many small guys. There were more small guys last year. This year, that's like far and fewer in between as far as the size goes. So I do wonder their approach this year, where you have more of the traditional looking wide receivers. What happens with some of the smaller guys? Or do people really just still look at, like, okay, a Tank Dell, is Zay Flowers, some of these guys were still able to be successful. Does that change some of the ideology behind if they're going to take some of these smaller guys or not? Or is it going to go right back to normal and some of these little guys are going to fall?
I think it's more of an overall view of the receiver position and the guys that you've been able to hit on as far as early picks and the guys you haven't been able to hit on. I think there's probably some truth to that, but the way the receiver position is trending in the last 3 drafts and going forward, a receiver is just going to be deep for big receivers, traditional receivers, that 6'1", 6'2" type feel, and then the smaller receivers sub 6 foot. I think you have depth at all 3 of those spots this year. I think there's maybe more of a lack of big body guys, but I don't think there would be a change of philosophy. No.
Okay.
Well, and Smith specifically, he's shorter than Tank Dell. He's 5'9". Tank Dell is 5'10". I mean, what was Dell's at the combine? Actually, I take it back. Dell's at the combine was 5'8" and 3/8". So
he's middle.
He's real small. Smith is 190. At least that's what it was measured at the Senior Bowl. So 190 in terms of weight. He's about 30 pounds heavier than what Tank Dell was, and he might be a smidgen taller, but not by a lot. So I think it depends on maybe the weaponry and what they bring from a skill set standpoint more than anything. I think the tale of the tale is that you can be a small receiver and have success in the NFL. We've seen it this year. Zay Flowers had a great year. You had Tank Dell, who had a phenomenal rookie campaign. You've got guys that you can rely on that are maybe a little bit smaller.
Why not?
All right, let's take our second break. When we come back, I want to talk about the safety position. There's a lot of talk about the defensive coordinator search and what's going on in Dallas. And, of course, with Dan Quinn's departure, so is maybe the departure of a philosophy around the safety position. We will talk about that and how it could affect the NFL draft when we come back right after this.
Hi, Drew Pearson, former Dallas Cowboy and now Pro Football Hall of Famer here. If you're struggling with your vision and tired of those contacts and glasses, don't throw a Hail Mary. Go where I went. Laser Care Eye Center, the official LASIK partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
Drew, thank you so much for trusting us with your vision correction procedure. At Laser Care Eye Center, we offer 6 different vision correction procedures to help patients see.
Check them out at dfweyes.com. Tell them Drew sent you. Hood hood.
In a stressful world, Lincoln provides balance and calm amidst the chaos by creating sanctuaries that move you through the world with ease. Our vehicles make your time richer and more uplifting with human-centric design, intelligent technology, and powerful performance. As the official luxury vehicle of the Dallas Cowboys, driving a Lincoln is just another way to show your team pride. Experience our full lineup of luxury vehicles, including the Corsair, Aviator, Navigator, and Nautilus at Lincoln.com.
I'm Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
And they snap it to Prescott, who looks right. It's not there. He escapes left. He'll run for a first down.
Just like football, when it comes to crypto, it's important to have a team you can trust. With blockchain.com, I know I'm in good hands. Since 2011, they've been trusted by millions around the world to buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrency.
Prescott's going to run this himself. Run it up the middle, and he scores.
Whether you're new to crypto or an active trader, they've got you covered. What are you waiting for? Get started at blockchain.com.
Hi, I'm Danny McCray, Dallas Cowboys alumni player here with Smoothie King. And Smoothie King wants to ask you, what's that sound? That's the sound of us magically transforming our smoothie bowls into 2 new decadent flavors. Dig into a cool acai or pitaya bowl, handcrafted with crunchy, purely Elizabeth granola, fresh strawberries, and finished with a velvety chocolate hazelnut drizzle. Perfect for breakfast, lunch, or anytime you want to munch. And that's the sound of you making them disappear. Smoothie bowls, now in 2 new decadent flavors. Only at Smoothie King, the official smoothie of the Dallas Cowboys.
This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
Come on out to AT&T Stadium on February 24th for the Monster Energy AMA Supercross Championship Series. Watch the world's best 2-wheel racers converge for one night of nonstop action. Enjoy unprecedented access to the sport's biggest stars with an up-close view of their race bikes and team rigs at FanFest. Tickets are on sale now at SeatGeek.com, the official ticketing partner of AT&T Stadium. That Reed used to be provider of AT&T Stadium.
You got to run it all back.
Now they're a partner here. Yeah, there you go. Come on out. No, I'm just kidding. Back here with Nick Harris, Aisha Morrison, Chris Beam in the back. I'm Kyle Yeomans, and we haven't really talked about the safety position a whole lot on this show just yet. We've mentioned a couple names here and there, mostly with Tell Me More and a couple of conversations. But with the way that Dan Quinn utilized safeties when he first arrived in Dallas in 2021 and revolutionized what this franchise viewed the safety position as. And say what you want about the 2023 season. A couple guys had some down years. I thought Donovan Wilson was very good this year. Malik Hooker and Jaron Kearse probably had their lowest year as a Cowboy. It wasn't an awful year from the safety group, but maybe under the radar for the most part. Does that change the way you look at the safety position in the NFL draft now that Dan Quinn is gone going into 2024? Because this is a franchise that has never really valued that position until Quinn came in and used it the right way.
I think that's tough to answer without a coordinator in the building.
Yeah.
You look at what the safeties have brought since Dan Quinn has been here, but you also look at what that sacrifices at times, and maybe it's having those 3 safeties on the field at all times. It's maybe lacks a little size in some areas, and you take away. But I think that's tough to answer without a coordinator in the room.
Let's say based off of the coordinator candidates that you've seen and that you've known enough about the way that they run their defense.
Yeah.
Who would probably fit the safety position the best?
Who would be? I mean, you look at New York Jets safeties coach Marquand Manuel.
Right.
Pretty good one, right?
And you look at what he brought from Quinn's philosophy as a defensive coordinator in Atlanta. It's very similar to what Quinn ran. I think there's a little bit of unfair kind of pinning onto Aiden Dirty as far as if he was to take the defensive coordinator job, the scheme remains the same, everything remains the same. I don't think that's the case. I think there's more of an emphasis up front. There's a reason that he was a defensive line coach. He's been a linebackers coach. He's a front seven main guy. You look at Quinn, I mean, his focus was in the secondary, and you look at all of his spawns in the coaching tree. Those are all secondary guys as well. I think Aiden Dirty probably brings what that pass rush has been over the course of the last 3 years. Sure, Quinn's a big part of it as well, but you look at what Dirty has accomplished. I mean, that's why the Seattle Seahawks want to interview him. That's why he's always brought up whenever defensive coordinator positions come open. I think if you want an emphasis up front, you look at Aiden Dirty, you look at Mike Zimmer. If you want to stay in the secondary and be able to focus on things in the defensive backfield, then you maybe look at Marquand Manuel or some of the other candidates as well.
Yeah, it depends on, for me, it depends on how you handle the linebacker position, even so, because from this season, I mean, the reason why some of the safeties were doing linebacker stuff was just the lack of depth at linebacker and things like that. So you shore up that position, I think it allows your safeties to play a little bit more free in a sense. I also will say I am really looking at Marquise Bell and his usage moving forward.
Yeah.
I would like to see him be a safety, big dog.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, we've watched him in practices and stuff do safety things, and it seems like that's where he thrives at. I don't know if you, and then also too, we had Wanye on earlier. You got guys in this room that I think you can get on the field and be able to play well. So I wonder if they even do touch the safety position at all. I wouldn't mind it. But I just wonder if they even feel like it's a need, because you do have somewhat adequate depth there right now, which is something you haven't been able to say in a minute.
And whenever they signed Marquise Bell back after the 2022 draft, one of the things that we said about him in terms of a comp was J-Ron Curse. He could do J-Ron Curse things because of the size, because of the athleticism. And if he's playing linebacker, that proves that fact. And I think if they move him back and they put him in a similar role, he'd probably be more successful in what Curse was doing, maybe even more than what Curse was doing this past year.
Yeah, I will say one thing. I mean, the Cowboys didn't run a crap ton of two-high safety or split safety. Maybe you might see that difference come into play as far as having more of the coverage safeties out there and then your guys closer to the line of scrimmage. I do think that maybe a Donovan Wilson or somebody could benefit from being closer to the line of scrimmage consistently than doing a whole bunch in coverage as he was, especially this past year.
Yeah, they ran single high safety 66% of the time. That was third most in the NFL. Split safety 31% of the time. And if it was third most in the NFL, it's third least in the NFL in terms of split safeties.
Yeah, and I think it wasn't first because of the injuries you had late in the season to Jonathan Hankins and then Gilmore in the Washington game. So they kind of had to revert back to the split safety looks at times.
Right. So, yeah, I do think some of those gentlemen like Wanye Thomas or Marquise Bell, some of those guys could benefit from, you doing that a little bit more. And then we've also seen that it gives offenses trouble in the league. So let's try it.
So let's talk about some of these prospects then. I think right up at the top of the list, you've got a couple names that you've heard before. Kalen Bullock, USC, Javon Bullard from Georgia, Tyler Nubin, Minnesota, Cameron Kitchens from Miami. Those are all names that we've thought about. Anybody stick out to you out of that group that you like the most in terms of just the safety position? Not necessarily talking about Cowboys fits, but just in general.
I've talked about a couple of these guys on the show pretty in depth, and I'm going to go ahead and regurgitate those points. Cameron Kitchens will start there. Hard-hitting, rangy safety that can be trusted on that single high island. He ran a lot of that for Miami. If that's the need that you want for the Cowboys, then I think that's a guy you could have behind Malik Hooker. And but he brings that physicality that Donovan Wilson has been able to be famous for here at Dallas and being able to lay a pop on somebody. Just go look at some Cameron Kitchens highlights, and you're going to be very excited with what you see.
Senior Bowl guy too.
Yeah, he was not there, but he was. He was
invited.
Yeah, he was invited. But he runs a lot of blitz packages too, and he knows exactly where to come, what hole to come down. Really aggressive, and I think that's maybe to a fault at times because he gives up some big things over the top, which I think would be perfect for a Dallas Cowboys defense, right?
Please.
Another guy I've talked about quite a bit is Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota. I've said it before. I think he's the best run defending safety in this class. Elite run defender out of the third level, and he can play up to the line of scrimmage on early downs. He's really trusted. He's a guy that I think coaches go out there and say, okay, you know what's going to be happening on this early down situation. You have the freedom to go wherever you want on the field because he has that much trust and IQ to be able to line up on the line of scrimmage, identify early what's going on. And there were plays at Minnesota last year where it was 1st and 10, beginning a drive on the 25-yard line, and teams were going to try to bait him with a play action and a really well-designed play action, and he identified it immediately and was able to drop back into coverage. And he's really impressive. I love Tyler Nubin. I think he's a guy that's going to make a lot of money in the NFL.
Yeah, you mentioned Miami. I wanted to bring up that gentleman, Cameron Kitchens, a teammate, James Williams, strong safety, 6'5", 215 pounds. He stood out to me as well. You talk about, I think that's kind of embedded in them as far as the aggression because, he's chirpy too. He's in your face, going to let you know he's there all day as well. He seems like he takes pride in his tackling, like you mentioned about the other gentleman, and making his presence felt. I think he has to sink his hips a little bit more in his back pedal and not play so tall because he is so tall, which is difficult. But he can give you if you have a rushing QB and you think he about to just be running around there free and stuff, he's gonna make him pay. He definitely is that thumper that wants to come downhill and let you know you're there. He has impressive range and burst in coverage, and so he can cover a lot of grass. He attacks angles wide, but he has the recovery speed to get there. So maybe there's some things he can work on in that regard. He can get square and take on linemen and running backs. He's not afraid to, and he processes early in reps, and that allows him to play free. That was something that stood out to me. I do think he has to do a little bit better job getting his depth at times, and then also too, he can over pursue like your guy talked about. But that's that aggression, and you got to find a balance there with them, and really learn how to balance his temperament because he is a hair on fire. I'm here. I'm about to let you know I'm here all day. Maybe you get a coach that can balance that temperament and help him use it in a good way. But he stood out to me when I was watching Kitchen, so that's funny that you brought him up. Yeah, what's up?
Instead of safety James Williams, can I interest you in linebacker James Williams?
Wait a second.
Well, they ran so much
safeties
single
to
high work.
linebackers again.
But
They
I
ran.
hear you though
Yeah.
because he has that intensity and he has that processing, quick reaction, come downhill. I'm not afraid to take on an O-lineman. I'm not afraid to take on a running back. I can do it. If a tight end's going to be out there, I'm going to punch him too. Like, I can see that. That's crazy. You said, okay.
Worked a lot of linebacker reps at Senior Bowl. You look at how much Miami ran single high last year and where they trusted James Williams in the second level at times. I think there's some versatility there with safety linebacker hybrid work.
I love that. Oh, well, I mean, Tater Tots, you
was about to say,
speaking somebody's language. He ain't here no more.
Whoever's in here may not love it as much, and I think the fans at home are probably like, no, please, no more linebacker safety hybrids. But he's built more for that than what Marquise Bell was. Marquise Bell is a true safety, and they moved him to linebacker out of need. And he did a nice job, I thought. Playing out of position, he did what he could. And he wasn't great at linebacker, but he was doing what he could. All right. Before we get out of here, I want you to give me your pick for the Super Bowl. Who's winning it? Chiefs, 49ers?
Hey, I grew up in Chapel Hill, Texas, which is 10 minutes down the street from White House, Texas, where Patrick Mahomes grew up. So I'm taking the Chiefs every single time.
I refuse to pick the 49ers. The Philly is our rival. The 49ers are our nemesis at this point. Absolutely not. I'm going with the Chiefs.
I like the way you said that. You should make it.
What does your brain tell you, though? Because my brain probably tells me something different. My heart, it's going in a different direction.
I just can't pick. Like, one thing I have noticed about this playoffs, and honestly, I liken what the Chiefs are doing to what y'all don't start with me. What the Warriors did the last year that Steph they won the championship when people didn't think they could do it. It gives me that vibe from Patrick Mahomes. It's like, oh y'all.
You think this is his last ride?
Y'all thought I was done? No, I don't. I think that they're continuing to figure things out. But a lot of people did not think this team was going to be here this year. I think they got a little chip on their shoulder. But their experience, they're one of the only teams that I feel like I've seen that experience seems like it actually has mattered.
It definitely does.
It seems like it actually has shown up in these games. And so for me, I'm like, I think the 49ers have a fantastic roster. They can get it done. But I'm just not picking against these people because they somehow figure it out. I hate it. I'm sick of both of them. I want to throw up at both of them, but they find a way to do it. So
Travis Kelce's on our TV right now, and he's wearing an Alpine F1 racing hat. So
I'm sick of seeing him.
I think he's going to win it. Give me the Chiefs to win. I think I'm right there with you, Nick. My head probably says, man, the 49ers are stacked all the way across the board, but my heart says, I don't want to talk about the 49ers.
I will throw up.
I've been a
give me
Brock
the
Purdy
Chiefs.
fan on many shows. I don't like the hate around Brock Purdy.
No,
He's
I don't.
done really
It's
well,
old at this
but I
point.
do think the Chiefs defense is going to give him issues. I think that defensive unit is really strong.
The only thing that we can look forward to is that when teams win the Super Bowl, they typically separate. So
Yeah.
let the 49ers crumble.
Both of these teams were in the Super Bowl in 2020.
Oh, I was going to ask you guys before we go. Leave me alone. They figured it out.
They did.
They did.
They figured it out, which a lot of teams don't. But I do want to ask you guys, with these teams that are in the Super Bowl, will they have coaches that are looking for other opportunities and stuff? And do you think that's going to matter? Do you think that maybe some of these gentlemen are people that people look at after? No.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thought. The Chiefs defensive line coach has actually gotten a lot of college love. He was in the mix for the Michigan defensive coordinator job, which could be going to Wink Martindale, oddly enough. Okay. I think that's one you look at. Niners, I think there's going to be a guy out of the Niners every year that ends up getting a job somewhere, but there's not many open positions. I think you would probably have to look at the Seahawks or college opportunity.
I'm only asking
Or
just
the Cowboys defensive coordinator position.
That's why I'm asking, because I'm like, it is going to be late, but you're already late.
Yeah.
I mean,
We
You
said
might
it
as
at the
well.
beginning of the show. It's not like it's hurting you by waiting and looking at your candidates. There's not a whole lot of spots open.
tracking.
Fair.
Okay, I just want to ask. I mean, hopefully I'm not tampering.
The only thing that this tells you right now is
Bye.
that they might like a candidate, but they haven't gone. That's the one yet.
Absolutely.
They haven't been completely sold on their guys. That's what this is telling you right now. Does it mean that they don't like a Mike Zimmer? Does it mean they don't like Ron Rivera? Does it mean they don't like Adam Dirty? No, it doesn't mean that. But it does mean that they want to at least go and look at their options, possibly to see if they have a guy that they fall in love with, and if not, they'll make a hire based off of who's the best candidate. So we'll see how it goes. Get it done. That's going to do it for us here on the Draft Show. Enjoy your Super Bowl weekend, everybody. Stay safe. Don't drink and drive. Make sure and drink responsibly with Miller Lite throughout the weekend, and have a great turnaround. And we'll be back on Tuesday. How about that?
Your sponsor's dream, Kyle.
I know. All right, Chris Beam, Nick Harris, Aisha Morrison. We'll have Brian, Zach, and Bobby back next week. I'm Kyle Yeoman saying so long from the Draft Show. We'll see you then.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys?